Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the newest slasher reboot to hit the big, or in this case, small screen. But are we able to break this bad streak that the series has frankly had? Let's find out. It truly is a rare thing that a movie comes along like this in today's day and age of spoiler-free kind of culture, and it just sort of openly and blatantly lays all of its cards out on the table in regards to not only what fans may see, but what its influences are. The tagline of this movie might as well be, well, it worked for Michael Myers, so why not? Because just like Halloween, we have yet another slasher reboot that wipes away all of the other installments and is no longer canon except for the original. We have the final girl who has been waiting dormant like her killer, who comes back after about 50 years once their killer starts to kill again. Seriously, it honestly does not get more blatant than that. Oh yeah, the title of this movie is the same thing as the original, just like with Halloween, except with this film, they've removed the.
Drop the. Just Facebook. It's cleaner. Shit.
And I have to be honest, guys, this is a series that I am not a fan of. The first film obviously is an undisputed classic, but apart from a few entries that I have really enjoyed, this is a franchise that I would be more than happy to see it die forever. And not to show my cards a little bit, but I think that's because the series has not convinced me or shown me that it deserves to continue going, and unfortunately, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you can kind of just add it to the pile as reasons why I think this franchise may need to take a backseat for a little bit. Sure, with this film, there are some fun moments to be had, but as is true with most Texas Chainsaw movies, there's honestly just this clear, complete lack of awareness of what made that original film so great in the first place. As is standard practice with films in this series, the film follows a group of young teenagers who are passing through Texas and get in a bit over their head. In this film's instance, we have these kids who move to this rundown remote town in Texas looking to renovate the place to seemingly be a hub for people and influencers to come when they want to leave the big city and kind of have a smaller life or a smaller day on the town. The group has seemingly good intentions about wanting to rejuvenate this town, but in doing so, they attract the attention of one Mr. Bubba Sawyer, who, like I said, kind of has just been hanging out for the last 50 years for some reason. Despite the fact this film never quite bothers to explain why Leatherface has been on this 5-decade-long hiatus, we're supposed to just kind of roll with it because, well, it worked for Halloween. The killer has been lying dormant for so long, and now they are back. They have some unfinished business with someone who escaped their clutches 50 years before. Does it sound familiar? Because it should. Which seems to really be the conceit of this movie. This entire film seems to be built around the fact that we, as audience members, really want to see this face-off between Leatherface and Sally after she escaped at the end of the initial film. Now, no disrespect to Sally at all, but I just don't think the horror community, if I dare to speak on behalf of the horror community, I don't think we really put Sally in the same echelon of final girls as we might with Laurie Strode. So when we saw the trailer for this movie, and that was something that was advertised that we were going to see in this movie, in this rematch that has been waiting 50 years in the making, I honestly couldn't help but laugh because it's kind of ridiculous, right? But okay, sure. Whatever. If it's going to happen, I'm curious to see how it is going to be done. And I have got to say, I know that there are going to be some people who love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like I do, who are probably going to be a little bit upset about what transpires in this film regarding the character of Sally. But for me, I honestly could not be happier. I can't get into much without spoiling this movie, but I think it was handled perfectly. It really surprised me, and this is sort of a fascinating way to kind of address the trend that we kind of see happening in horror movies, not only with Halloween, as I mentioned, but also Scream, which just came out a few months ago. But the return of Sally is not the only thing this film has to offer. We have a new batch of kids for Leatherface to stalk in this film, one of whom is portrayed by Elsie Fisher, who I absolutely adored in 8th grade. So happy to see her back again. And as far as these characters are concerned, look, it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. They are never really given a ton of depth here, But the thing that I just found, let's say odd about this movie is it really makes a point to kind of poke fun at this sort of generation, my generation, and kids on their phone and all that cancel culture kind of mentality, a lot of things just regarding Gen Z. And I think what I found so strange is just how this movie goes about addressing that kind of stuff. And, because sure, if you want to address and critique these things, have at it. I'd be curious what the film would have to say about that. But the unfortunate thing is this movie just really kind of discusses these points in such a vague way that any point that it tries to make are really just sort of this glancing blow. The film merely just brings these ideas up and brings these topics up, but never really addresses or tackles them in a way that is substantive enough to even know where the film lands on it or what it's trying to say. So much so that it really made me wonder why it was even brought up at all. I have an inkling that the film brings it up because of comedy reasons, and that it's, don't think too hard about it, just laugh, it's sort of funny. Cancel culture, haha, we get it, But I think that that's such a common theme and problem with this movie is that I don't know if a lot of the choices that this film makes are because of comedy or if they're taking it very seriously. I could see an argument for both, which unfortunately is not really a great quality to have if you are going to make a horror comedy. Sure, all great horror comedies have great horror and great comedy, but the unfortunate reality about this movie is I really don't think it has either. But something that is truly at the front and center of this movie is gore and violence, which this film has plenty of, far more than any other movie in this series thus far. There are numerous moments in this film where Leatherface straight up does some Mortal Kombat fatalities on some people. It gets downright grisly, which honestly, results may vary on how that affects you. This is a series that initially did not start off very violent, almost famously so, and has since kind of gradually evolved into, this. And I think for the most part, a lot of the kills in this movie really work for me. In my rebuttal to anyone who would say, well, the original film wasn't so violent, so this movie is just kind of violent for the sake of violence. And sure, although I can definitely understand that perspective, and I do think that there is a bit of truth in that, I also think that this movie makes a point to show something that this encounter is a bit more personal for Leatherface here. A lot of these kills seem very angry and very vindictive and pointed, which I think is very much so on purpose. However, although there are a lot of great bloody moments in this film, there is one sequence that takes place on a bus that from start to finish honestly really did not work for me. The sequence kicks off with an absolutely horrible line, one of the worst in the movie. You can watch it on the trailer if you choose to. But then Leatherface proceeds to go on an absolute rampage on this bus. And I know this comparison will be a bit lost on some of you, but I think some of you horror fans will know exactly what I'm talking about. But this sequence really reminded me of the pool party scene in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Stay with me here if you're lost. But when you take a character that is terrifying and is so scary when they're in this isolated incident with someone, when you take that same character and put them in this highly populated area, and you just have them tearing through all of these people, it really starts to lose its luster and lose what makes these movies and these characters so effective in the first place. And that's precisely what I'm talking about when I say that this series has this horrible habit of completely disregarding what made the original film special. Because in sequences like this, it seems that they think that Leatherface is just this kind of Terminator character who just mows through like 15 people at a time. But that's really not the case. See, for myself, I always found Leatherface the most scary when he just kind of puts you on those meat hooks and just slowly starts chipping away at you. And it literally is the antithesis of what this scene is. And I just honestly think it truly misses the point of what makes this series great. Yeah, sure, blood, guts, violence, cool. I love that kind of stuff in horror. And gaining that in the series, I think is fine. However, you really should be considering what you lose when you have that, which I think is actually a pretty accurate summation of a lot of my thoughts regarding this movie. I think this film, like many of the bad sequels in this series, just kind of loses sight of why fans love the original, and it exchanges a lot of the things that fans do and love about the original, and instead gives us this pretty gratuitous and pretty unnecessary rematch between these two characters, and I don't really think anyone was asking for it. And it proceeds to kind of just wipe away all of the other sequels, a lot of whom a lot of fans in this series love, and some of which, mind you, are far better than this, and just kind of say that this unhinged maniac that you love from the 70s, well, he was kind of just hanging out for 50 years. And I have to say, I do not think it was worth the wait. So did you guys see Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Where does it rank for you in this series? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video. And if you did, you can click on the link down below so you can subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.